So this is a song that I learned about a month ago from Rabbi Deborah Sachs-Mintz from Hadar at the Hadar Rising Song Intensive. And this is her new rendition of Ele Chamda Libi, which you can find on page 11, the Siddur. And the words are translated, God is my heart's desire. Come out, do not hide. Ele Chamda Libi. Ele Chamda Libi. Ele Chamda Libi. Try it with me. Ele Chamda Libi. Ele Chamda Libi. Ele Chamda Libi. Ele Chamda Libi. Hosanna, Hosanna, oh Hosanna, oh Hosanna, Le'anatitalam. Ele Chamda Libi. Ele Chamda Libi. Ele Chamda Libi. Ele Chamda Libi. Hosanna, Hosanna, oh Hosanna, 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 Le'anatitalam. Chamda Libi, Chamda Libi, Ele Chamda Libi, Chamda Libi, Ele Chamda Libi. Ele Chamda Libi. Oh, Ele Chamda Libi. Ele Chamda Libi. Hosanna, Hosanna, oh Hosanna, oh Hosanna, Le'anatitalam.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So when you suffer a case of whiplash because the events of the world are churning and churning, it's so nice to have Shabbat. So nice to have a beautiful melody like this to enter us into a little sanctuary in time and space. It's so nice to engage in rituals that are thousands of years old because the world is changing at such a breakneck pace. Has it only been 10 days since the inauguration? And our hearts are elated with the release of each and every hostage. And then our hearts are broken with the tragic loss of life in a horrific plane crash. And the world keeps churning. Shabbat is that little pause in time, not to shut out the world, but just to calm ourselves and reflect thoughtfully on the world. That's what we do on Shabbat. We usher in Shabbat as well with the kindling of Shabbat lights on page 3. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who beheld us, as their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light. So may we in our own day be among those who kindle light together. O source of light and truth,
Creator of the
eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live.
Lead us to take the words we shall speak
into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need.
all who bring offerings for their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lechadlik ner, lechadlik ner shel Shabbat.
And our welcome of Shabbat continues with the singing of Lecha Dodi on page 20.
Lecha dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad ishmi'anu el hamechad Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shem ultiferet v'leitchila. Lecha dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala pene Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lecho necha ki mekor abrecha merosh mikedev nesucha סוף מעשה במחשבה תהילה. lecha
דודי
לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה. lecha דודי לקראת לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי, 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 שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
We rise and face the entrance to the synagogue to dramatize our welcome of Shabbat.
בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצולה, תוך אמונה עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת
We remain standing for our call to worship, the Baruch Hu, page 28.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך, ברוך אדוני המבורך, המבורך לעולם ועד, המבורך, המבורך לעולם ועד.
Please be seated. The Hebrew of the next prayer is so much more poetic even than the good faith efforts of the English translations and interpretations. So this evening, this first prayer, which gives thanks for the natural world around us in light and dark, will read and then traditionally chant the second part in the Hebrew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chokhmah poteach sha'arim, uvitfuna mishanei itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umisader et hakochavim, b'mishmerotem berakia kirtzono. Borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or. ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, מבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו. אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב הרבים. From the world around us, to the world of infinite love within us. Page 32, Ahavat Olam.
Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha
B'ta,
Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Hotanu
Limadeta.
Al ken Adonai Eloheinu, B'shochveinu u'v'kumenu, Nasiach b'chukecha, V'nitzmach b'divrei Toratecha, u'v'mitzvotecha, le'olam va'ed. Ki chayenu ve'orech yameinu, uvahem negeh yomam v'layla, ve'ahavatcha al tasir mimenu le'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael.
We join together in the Shema and the V'ahavta. Page 34.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu,
Adonai Echad.
Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam va'ed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, b'chol levavecha, u'b'chol nafshecha, u'b'chol me'otecha. Ve'hayu הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרת לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, הייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Adonai Elohechem Emet.
The moment of liberation, the actual Exodus, is one Torah portion away next week, and we'll be celebrating Shabbat Shirah, the Song of the Sea, the Song of Thanks, next week in a very special musical service. But we celebrate it each and every time we gather in the singing of the next prayer, Mi Chamocha, which is taken from the Song of the Sea. And you know, the experts who study the development of language look and they can tell that the Hebrew of the Song of the Sea is the most archaic of the entire Hebrew Bible, along with the Song of Deborah, by the way, these really ancient archaic poems. And so the scholarly consensus is that Mi Chamocha comes from a poem of triumph written several centuries before the rest of the 5 books of Moses, and within a century or two of the purported Exodus event. So when we sing the Mi Chamocha, we're singing a song that our ancestors composed 10th or 11th century BCE, over 1,000 years before the Common Era, and maybe 100 or 2 beyond the Exodus, which our best estimate was in the middle of the 1200s BCE. That's how deeply we connect with our song of freedom, Mi Chamocha.
Mi chamocha Elim Adonai, mi kamocha nehedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot oseh eleh, nora tehilot oseh eleh, malechutecha ראו בניך בוקע הים לפני משה ומרים זה עלינו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Page 42. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace and raise us up, our guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace.
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים.
השכיבנו אדוני
אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. ושמור צאתנו השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים. ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני, הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים.
I came across something humorous the other day. It was an Israeli psychologist talking about the fact that in Israel, doesn't matter if you consider yourself religious or secular, you do relate to Shabbat. It's just part of the rhythm of life. And the part I found funny is that she went on to say, if you don't join in a family Shabbat dinner, it's a national crime in Israel. Families get together, whatever their level of observance, to observe Shabbat. And on page 44, we read, the people of Israel shall keep Shabbat, observing Shabbat throughout the ages as a covenant for all time.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
We are a people in whom the past endures, in whom the present is inconceivable without moments gone by. The Exodus lasted a moment enduring forever. What happened once upon a time happens all the time. For the Tefillah, Amidah prayer, page 46, we rise.
Adonai, Sfatai tiftach, Ufi yagid tehilatecha, Adonai, Sfatai tiftach, Ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, Sfatai Tiftach, Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומר חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיית הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
Please be seated. Let's read together on the top of page 55. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. The Song of Peace, Shalom Rav, page 60.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rab al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. V'tov be'enecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rab al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rab al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. Tasim leolam.
Now, at the end of the Amidah, our thoughts turn to those of our loved ones and all others in need of healing, be this a healing of body or healing of soul. Even as we rejoice in the hostages who have been set free, we know that there are scores who have not, some of whom are not included in any of the present agreements, others who will be brought home to be buried. So our healing thoughts, as they do every week, extend to the hostages and their families, to the soldiers and their families, and to those who you would like to name now in a healing prayer.
Schwartz, Victoria Kramer, John Lamaka.
That's Robin, Ann Friedman, and Ruben Friedman.
Dale Winslow, Jackie Brody, Chuck Martel, Susan Adelstein, Susan Drummond.
Mishaberach avotenu v'imotenu hu deshak b'mhera rifua shlema rifuat nefesh b'rifuat aguf v'nomar amen.
Amen. Mishaberach avotenu mekor habracha imotenu. May the source of strength who blessed the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mekor habracha avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Now, this week, the Torah portion recites those plagues that are familiar to us from the Passover Seder, which is taken from the book of Exodus. And then the Torah pauses in its storytelling about the Exodus in 2 chapters, chapter 12 and 13 of Exodus, and says, I want you to remember all these events. The story's not even over yet. The Torah pauses to command us to remember the story by telling it in every generation. And says, make sure to teach your children what God did with an outstretched arm. So that's maybe signaling that the story will have a happy ending, a good ending. But it's already inserting this pedagogy and this strong command to remember the history of your people and the custom of a Paschal lamb and the custom of eating unleavened bread, matzah, is introduced as rituals to help the remembrance of the story. Storytelling remains a very powerful means of communicating our values in society. And as we pause this evening, we think about what stories we need to communicate to our children and their children. Because sometimes in the business of our lives, we forget they need to hear stories that they will remember. We pause.
Oseh shalom v'roma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
Now, one of the headlines that you may have seen or you may have missed in these last head-turning 10 days is what occurred when the Reverend Marianne Edgar Budd chastised the President of the United States, who was sitting in the pews right in front of her. And it was, as chastisements go, it was very mild. She simply asked that the President and the new administration remember and have compassion and have mercy on those who are frightened and suffering and frightened of being deported from this country. And it became a headline. because a news reporter asked the president as he was leaving this service at the National Cathedral, and he said, I didn't like this service. Could have been better. Could have been much better. And maybe leave it at that, but no. After this most gentle of chastisements, then he let loose on this reverend in his social media, and I'm not even going to repeat what he said about her. But at the same time, many people cheered that she was doing what we call in my line of work, prophetic preaching. It goes back to the great confrontations of the prophets speaking truth to power. I mean, if you want to hear a chastisement, then read the words of the prophet Nathan to the great King David, for example. Or, of course, the paradigmatic Moses to Pharaoh. But even going back, Abraham to God over the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, we're focusing on Moses, so I went back this week to take a good look at his prophetic speaking, preaching in the book of Exodus. And actually, I was almost a little bit shocked. It's very minimal. What Exodus stresses is Moses' actions, not so much his words. If you want to get to the prophetic speaking Moses, you have to go to the book of Deuteronomy, which is a recapitulation of everything that happens in the first 4 books, and by scholarly consensus was written later. So along came an author who said, Moses really doesn't say that much in Exodus, or Leviticus, or Numbers, for that matter. And so almost all of the book of Deuteronomy is Moses' orations. But in the first account, the original account, Moses basically only speaks twice. And the first time is what I read last week from the Torah. That powerful speech, all in the name of God. And remember what the last line was? That the Israelites did not heed Moses, could not hear Moses because of their broken spirit. Kotzer ruach ve'avodah kasha, and their burden of slavery. So that one didn't go over well. And Moses was famously reticent about speaking. No sooner does he get the call from God than he says, I don't think you have the right person here. I'm heavy of lifts. I may have a stutter. And that's when, if you recall, God says, don't worry, Aaron will do the talking for you. I'll tell you what to say. You'll tell it to Aaron. And in fact, it's Aaron who does most of the speaking. But Moses and Aaron basically have one short little message that they repeat about 5 times to Pharaoh, and it's one sentence long. Shalach et ami v'ya'avduni. Let my people go that they may serve me. The first part of that one sentence is, of course, the famous line. But I was searching, well, what else did Moses say to Pharaoh? Not there in the book of Exodus. But nevertheless, Moses is seen as the archetype and the role model, because of his prophetic pronouncements in the book of Deuteronomy later, but also because of his actions. And actions are worth maybe even more than words in some circumstances. So I wanted to share with you a really nice description of Moses the activist from a brand new book by the Jewish thinker Shai Held, who I know personally, who actually wrote a book for us at JPS on the Torah portions. But this is from a new book about Judaism and love. And he writes, the Bible portrays Moses as a worthy heir of Abraham. As soon as Moses grows up, the book of Exodus tells us he immediately intervenes in 3 scenes of interpersonal brutality and injustice. I mean, what do we know of Moses besides his birth story? Only 3 things. And they're all about fighting brutality and injustice. He witnesses an Egyptian taskmaster beating an Israelite slave. He steps in and strikes. The word is strikes, but presumably means kills the abuser. Then he sees 2 Israelite men scuffling. He tries to separate them and admonishes the offender. Then, having been forced to flee Egypt, Moses arrives in Midian and observes a group of male shepherds mistreating young Midianite women at the well. And without hesitating, he drives the shepherds off and waters the women's flocks. So Shai Held writes, who, by the way, is the head of Hadar, the rabbinic head of Hadar, 3 things are worth noticing about this narrative. First, when Moses sees injustice, looking the other way is not an option for him. He notices and he acts. Second, when injustice is the issue, the identity of the victim doesn't matter. He intervenes when it's an Israelite. He intervenes when it's a Midianite. Moses stands up for an Israelite against an Egyptian oppressor, for an Israelite against a fellow Israelite, and for a Midianite against other Midianites, and for women against men. And then he writes, finally, in biblical narrative, the first thing that a character says reveals something significant about his character. Moses' first words are a direct challenge to a man who is abusing another. Why do you strike your fellow? Those are his first words. Tellingly, the first words spoken by the leader of the Israelites are an attempt to impose a standard of justice. Moses cannot tolerate interpersonal wrongdoing. Where many of us would be tempted to look away, would immediately begin to offer rationalizations for what we should do or mind our own business, Moses chooses a different path. And Rabbi Held concludes, not for naught is it that this person is entrusted with helping Abraham's family become a nation. If Abraham's children are to, and this is a quote from Genesis, do the just and the right, they need a man like Moses to lead them and to model for them a courageous commitment to justice. So Moses is the person who can't look away, the person who steps in once, twice, 3 times, the man who, on one hand, is reluctant to accept the mission to go back to his people, but recognizes it's the right thing to do. So we celebrate the words of Moses in the Torah, but above all, the activism of Moses. That's what a leader is about. Shabbat Shalom. As we open the ark for the Emuno, the bottom of page 282, we open the ark and please rise.
Shalom,
On this Shabbat, as we mourn the terrible loss of life in the plane crash, we also remember the Yortzeit, the anniversary of the passing of Frida Roberg, mother of Kurt Roberg, Sigmund Rosenholz, grandfather of Bill Ziegler, Miriam Schumann, mother of Debbie Schwartz, Martha Seymour, mother of Michael Seymour, Marilyn Rosenberg, mother of Scott Rosenberg. For all those close to our hearts and for all those for whom there may be no one to say Kaddish, we join in the Kaddish prayer on page 294. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah be'alma divrach yirutei malchutei
Chayachon
Yomechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael.
Kalav Isman Kari V'Yeru
Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Le'olam Olamei Almai. Yitbarach v'yishtabach
V'yitpa'ar
v'yitroman v'yitnaseh v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shmei d'kudishat v'chu Elam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amirat v'yama v'imru Amen.
Yehei Shalama Rabba Min Shemayim V'chayim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael
Imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'ma Yaseh Shalom
Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael.
Imru Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. Amen. Please be seated. Marshall will come forward to tell us about a big weekend coming up next weekend. And I'm not talking about the Super Bowl. No.
Shabbat Shalom. Before the big weekend, though, we do have a smaller weekend. This coming weekend coming up, we do have Torah study tomorrow, and we have religious school on Sunday, confirmation and youth group meeting as well. But as the Rabbi mentioned, on next Friday, the 7th, is a special Shabbat, Shabbat Shirah with song. It'll be celebrating social justice. We'll also be thanking all the volunteers at Emuno who do so much to help out. And then the following day, on Saturday, there will be a Torah study with a special Tu B'Shvat Seder. And then there'll also be a Tu B'Shvat program for the religious school on Sunday. And then on Monday will be the first meeting of the movie club on the 10th. And so there's a lot coming up next week. And thank you, Debbie, for sponsoring tonight's Oneg.
Thank you. Ein Keloheinu is one of the classic songs of Shabbat. This is one of the more modern melodies to Ein Keloheinu, which you can find on page 322.
In Keloheinu, in Kadonenu, in Kemalkeinu, in Kemoshienu, Micheloheinu, Michadonenu, Michemalkeinu, Michemoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Shefiru, Avotenu, Lefanecha Ketoret Tasami, ay, 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 la, 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 la,
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. And thank you to our drummer.